Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Forgive me, I'm just a bit under the weather. My voice will sound a bit lower and smooth and smarmy. I promise I'm not bored, especially when you look at some of the stories we're going to be diving into this evening. So I apologize, bear with me. No other further intro stuff. Let's get right to it. This is one of the most insane stories that I quite literally did a double take when reading. According to a Daily Caller News Foundation article, specifically by Philip I'm not sure how to pronounce his name correctly, Linsicki at the Daily Caller News Foundation. Sorry, Philip. A Chinese Communist Party intelligence official with sniper training has bought a building that is just steps from the White House. I'm going to repeat that. A Chinese Communist Party intelligence official and trained sniper has purchased a historical building that overlooks the White House, the residence of the President of the United States of America. So according to this article, and it is truly insane, a senior Chinese Communist Party intelligence official is the new owner of this historic building, according to this Daily Caller News Foundation investigation. Located approximately 650 feet northeast of White House grounds. And for those on the live stream, we can actually show you this graphic that they have included in their report. It is at 729 15th Street Northwest in Washington. The 100-year-old securities building on 15th Street, again, 650 feet northeast of the White House grounds, was purchased on July 21st, 2026 for $8.4 million by Philip Q and Family Foundation, according to the filings. Now, the building's new owner, Philip Q, has held numerous positions within Chinese Communist intelligence and state security arms, according to university records and DCNF translations of Chinese government announcements. Shocker, Q did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Q said in 2021, quote, "The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is kind of like a kind but firm parent. It has guided our people out of hardship, led China's sons and daughters to build a new country, and is steering us towards great national rejuvenation. Q's ownership of the securities building poses an urgent national security threat and must be investigated by federal authorities." That's according to multiple intelligence experts talking to the Daily Caller News Foundation. This property allows access for big splashy intel ops, as well as for more classic operations like a listening post or Stingray-like systems to collect phone calls, text messages, digital exhaust, things that you would expect from the digital product from wireless services communicating with one another. When your phone sends a text message, that signal is in the open air and it may be encrypted, but if there was anyone who was able to decrypt something like that other than the United States, it's very likely to be the Chinese Communist Party, who, other than the Soviet Union's intelligence apparatuses, is probably one of the most sophisticated decryption mechanics on the face of this earth. They are specifically built to steal IP and communication from the United States. Quote, "What's especially alarming are emerging operations that properties like this allow, like hidden drone swarms or shipping container missiles," said Wright, who hosts the Wright Report podcast. "This kind of property is where the next 9/11 will come from, and it is coming." Now let's actually talk about this guy a little bit. Who is this Qi Feili guy? His Chinese name, again, Qi Feili, has held at least 4 Chinese government positions, beginning with a career as a detective in the criminal investigation team in Shanghai. So, this isn't just some random guy who used to be a Chinese national and he's escaped the country. You're going to hear some of the Democrat politicians in the United States, like State Senator Kathy Fedora in Indiana, who has made excuses for Chinese-owned property here in the United States, saying that, well, all these are just, Chinese nationals that are just escaping from the horrors of communist China. Excuse me. And as you're going to see, that's not the case at all, because you're not stupid. Those who are tuning into the show are most likely normal Americans who recognize this is kind of messed up. Shanghai's Criminal Investigation Team is a unit within Shanghai's Public Security Bureau, which functions as a subordinate of China's FBI, the Ministry of Public Security, according to, again, Daily Caller News Foundation translations of Chinese, both Cantonese and Mandarin government reports. Now, it's unclear how long Q worked for the Shanghai PSB, And again, this would be like the FBI branch office in Indianapolis or in Columbus or in Washington, D.C., those kinds of things. He finished his combat training in October of 2011 when he enrolled in a Shanghai Jiaotong University master's program. And the photos show him wearing, the uniform and in the fatigues during team building war game exercises. Quote, classmate Q Feli, who has undergone special forces training, served as a commander in the war game exercises and not only directed his troops to successfully capture enemy positions, but also killed 1/3 of the opposing forces with 42 shots, achieving the best individual sniper record, according to the DCNF translation. Q has continued to support and cooperate with China's security apparatus in recent years, including through his role as honorary chairman of the, are you ready for this? The Hong Kong Immigration Department Staff Association. Meaning this, when China started moving in on Hong Kong and you saw all of the democracy protests and people getting killed, shot, and disappeared, this guy was a key part of the Hong Kong Immigration Integration Team. He organized events introducing Hong Kong students to the Shanghai SWAT team in 2023 and 2024. Now, this is a severe problem. By the way, the rest of the article, again, this is over at the Daily Caller News Foundation by Philip Len Sizky. And I'm so sorry, I'm not pronouncing it. It's spelled Lenczzyki. I apologize to Philip because it is a phenomenally written and researched article. A huge credit to Amber Duke and her team over at the Daily Caller and their news foundation. Later on in the article, by the way, several of the intelligence experts who have been interviewed on this, he's highest ranking unified front position as chairman of the ACF-ROC's Shanghai Overseas Chinese Foundation, promoting overseas cultural exchanges, and he operates as only a charity in the Shanghai system. Now he's currently helping to operate a Chinese American Heritage Museum here in the United States. And they, the Philip Q and Family Foundation is headquartered within another historic property, shared with 6 other entities also controlled by Q, including the CCP-tied Chinese American Museum in Washington, D.C., according to business filings and DCNF translations of Chinese government announcements. The CAMDC, the Chinese American Museum, it's a 501c3 nonprofit, affirming to advance the understanding and knowledge and appreciation of the Chinese American experience. Why are these allowed to be nonprofit organizations? Why are foreign governments allowed to operate? And by the way, not just foreign governments, but who the U.S. Treasury Department declares as foreign adversaries in the United States. And I want to make that distinction clear. It's going to come up in a minute here when I show you our map, again, compiling some of these details. It's truly bewildering how many organizations and institutions who are literally, according to United States Congress, considered economic, institutional, and intelligence adversaries of the United States, according to the State Department, the Treasury Department, the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the National Security Administration, and yet they are allowed to own distinctive properties outside the White House. Now, here's this map that we compiled this afternoon, are some of the military installations around the United States in which the Chinese Communist Party and nationals still associated with current active citizenship status in the Chinese communist regime, meaning that they're not, like, for example, I am not allowed to even go to China. If I show up to China, to mainland communist China, sorry, not Taiwan, which is the real China. If I show up to mainland China, I will be arrested on site. I am banned from traveling to the CCP. These individuals who currently own property or have attempted to buy property in the United States next to a literal nuclear base in the United States, as well as the Kansas City National Security Campus, the largest naval warfare facility, surface warfare center in the United States, that would be NCWC Crane in southern Indiana, Barksdale Air Force Base, Laughlin Air Force Base down in Texas, MacDill, Fort Liberty, Nashua Camp Grayling up in Michigan, Grand Forks Air Force Base. Again, that's a nuclear site up in North Dakota. NWSTF Boardman between Oregon and Washington. Obviously, Camp Pendleton in California. This is a serious breach that has been going on for a long time. Radio crew, we have to send you over to the commercial because of the FCC rules. And we're going to continue on the live stream because, unfortunately, even though my voice is tired, there's just too much news to kind of cut and go to a bit of a brief break here. So join us there, youtube.com/Daily Signal. Other than that, radio and TV crews will catch you on the other side of your commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, I see some of the comments very clearly saying, hey, I'm concerned for the president of the United States and the security of Washington, D.C. We're going to get to that in a couple of minutes. But bear with me for a few minutes as we walk through some of these things. By the way, it is a task that I give my team. Whenever there is an article or a report that is older than about a year, they flag it for me. So producer Jen, many of you see in the comments, wonderful researcher for our show, when she was compiling some of these reports with producer Daniel this afternoon, she said, Tony, hang on a second here. Some of these reports are a bit old. They are older reports. And basically asked this in case I wanted to leave them out or to, kind of note this to you guys. No, I told her I want these, even if they're from 2023, 2020, 2017, I want them to be in this list because how many times these pop up, oh, China's buying up territory right next to a U.S. military installation or a power plant or a water treatment facility or a major, what was one of these? A major, scrolling through here, a major financial institution or a military research installation or a testing site, a Silicon Valley information hub. And it just kind of pops up briefly, very briefly in a news cycle, and then it disappears forever. And then you get another one of these stories a couple of years later, and then it disappears again. And these should be compiled. And the reason I'm telling you this is I want you to contact your state legislatures. I want you to contact. I don't care if it's allowed or it's not allowed for me to say, hey, you should contact your state representative, your national congressional representative, your senators, and ensure that any kind of Chinese national owned building that is within 50 miles of a U.S. military installation or a major political hub should be confiscated for national security reasons. Absolutely, unequivocally, no ifs, ands, or buts. If a Chinese nonprofit can purchase a building 600 feet from the White House grounds that is overlooking, owned by a Chinese trained sniper, an intelligence official, then I, working for a nonprofit, should at least be able to tell you that that's not acceptable. Anywho, some of these, the Grand Forks Air Force Base. The Air Force claims a proposed Chinese-owned corn plant near a North Dakota base, significant national security threat in 2023. The $350 million Fufeng USA purchase. The Air Force letter deeming the facility a security risk. 2023, North Dakota's governor's office. At the time, Governor then Burgum, now the Secretary of the Interior, for the Trump administration, issued a statement on the Air Force letter citing the significant threat from the Fufeng project in Grand Forks. 2024, Lackland Air Force Base down in Texas. At the time, Senate Office for John Cornyn urges the Department of Defense to block the Chinese wind farm near Lackland Air Force Base. Why? Because you could put certain kinds of recording equipment on top of the Chinese-owned wind turbines that could then provide a great security risk monitoring Lackland Air Force Base. I mean, it is truly insane. Truly insane. 2023, a Bloomberg analysis after Texans blocked the Chinese billionaire's wind farm cited that local rancher pushback led to Texas passing the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act. So again, a report like this popped up. Citizens in Texas took action, and the state government of Texas banned this crap. Who was it heavily criticized by? Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, Cory Booker of New Jersey, Maxine Waters' elderly rear end out in California, of course, President Joe Biden. Truly some insane stuff. I mean, just some insane stuff that is going on here. Now, Travis Air Force Base in California, $800 million in acquisition of 50,000 acres around Travis Air Force Base by Flannery Associates, according to the FBI and the Department of Defense. Eventually, this Chinese aggregate and purchase was rooted out. Again, we have, Jess Air Force Base, Fort Liberty, Eglin Air Force Base. In 2024, and this is the last thing I'll mention because the radio crew's coming back and my home station is in Indianapolis, this is the last thing I want to mention on this topic here. Because then I want to get to the president's lack of a response so far. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. My home station in WIBC, we're on a lot of radio stations these days, some community cable stations. There was one case in particular in 2024. There were concerns over the Chinese purchasing near Indiana military installations, such as the Naval Surface Warfare Center, NSWC, Crane Division in Martin County. Now, I'm very friendly with the Crane entity. It's a contracting firm for the military industrial complex here in Indiana. It is where we test a ton of our naval warfare surface stuff. The story that you saw about a month ago about the U.S. blowing up a huge chunk of an Iranian port with an unmanned, essentially an unmanned bass boat in the Strait of Hormuz, that was first tested and developed here in Indiana. And I know because earlier in the calendar year of 2026, I traveled up to Fort Wayne, where Senator Jim Banks was holding a defense contracting summit. It was excellent. At the time, Secretary of the Navy Phelan kept me from saying something a little more than classified in a question about outfitting the Navy with anti-drone countermeasures, which are kind of important now because the Iranians and the Chinese are instituting drone swarms. Now, drone swarms are actually really easy to take out, but that's another topic for another time, and I'm probably going to have to ask some permission before I share that with y'all. So, what happened? In 2024, a lot of individuals started to get a little bit nervous after Chinese connected organizations and individuals who were not just expatriates, but who were here and still with travel back and forth to Beijing, to Shanghai, to Shenzhen, were buying up farmland near the Naval Surface Warfare Center in southern Indiana. And it eventually led state lawmakers to propose restrictions on land purchases by various entities tied to foreign adversaries. Now, these foreign adversaries, this particular law, it's connected to the U.S. Treasury's designation. And I'm sorry, I'd like to pull up this article, but unfortunately, my company's security policy is keeping me from pulling up a Wish TV article. One of those things. Long story short, there was a state senator, Fatty Kudora. He's a Democrat, not a huge fan of mine, to be honest with you. He made a complaint when the Indiana State Senate was passing this bill to ban the Chinese from purchasing land in Indiana at all, much less next to military installations. And he said, I agree with the general idea of this bill, but I don't like the idea of banning foreign nationals from purchasing land because what if they're trying to escape a foreign country or a hostile regime? Then they can become citizens of the United States. If you are coming here from Cuba and you seek asylum in the United States, or you're coming here from China as an expatriate and you are seeking asylum in the United States, then you can renounce China or renounce Cuba or renounce Venezuela, like Daniel DiMartino, for example, a very good friend of mine, has done. And you can then build a future in the United States and become a U.S. citizen and take the oath and live by it. Then we can talk about land. And even then, I'm sorry, I don't think that you should be allowed to purchase land right next to a U.S. military installation. I don't care. The security risks are greater than your desire to build a future. You can build a future a lot of places in this country. It doesn't have to be next to the biggest naval warfare facility on research and expansion and development in the country. And as to the President of the United States, I want to make this clear. For the President, specifically the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has done a phenomenal job. We're going to talk about him later because there's some concerns about the USS Abraham Lincoln and about the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy and, again, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, have done a phenomenal job boxing China out of, for example, the Strait of Malacca, in which the United States has brokered a defensive understanding agreement with Malaysia and with Indonesia to keep China from eventually blocking off almost all of our major Pacific trade in the Southeast Asian section of the world, the Pacific Islander region. And also, the Trump administration has done a phenomenal job of boxing China out of the Belt and Road Initiative, especially through the State Department's phenomenal statecraft under Secretary of State Marco Rubio. It has been a masterclass. I will remind you that when the president of Panama got a little bit stuffy and said, maybe we'll go ahead and work with China and we'll allow China to continue owning these two very curiously placed firm ports on the western side of the Panama Canal, literally on each side of the exit of the Panama Canal towards the Pacific Ocean. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio flew down to Panama and had all of the little reporters and all of the other military staff leave the room. And what I can only assume, if I ever get him on the show, this is absolutely what I'm going to ask him. I can only assume he leaned forward and spoke in a menacing, slightly Cuban accent and said, if you do not open the Panama Canal and block China out of it, we will erase Panama's sovereignty from existence. That is how the United States should operate with regard to China. The biggest mistake of the Trump administration, forgetting tariffs, forgetting any of the other things, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, whether they're verbal foibles, anything else, the biggest mistake that Donald Trump as the president of this country has made is allowing President Xi of China to continue sending Chinese students and nationals over here simply because China pays for it. You want to talk about tariffs? Tariff China. You want to talk about security and economic embargoes? Far more important even than Iran, China. Either box them out or don't. Here in Indiana, Purdue University, a major engineering school in the United States. Forgive me for all of the Indiana examples. It is just where I am the most familiar. How many Chinese students that we have flowing nationals? This has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has nothing to do with immigrants coming to the United States. It is a national security issue when those who take an oath of allegiance to the communist regime of China are given open and unfettered access into the United States, and then they are given special grants to stay here after they graduate and work at huge tech companies and AI companies. While at the same time, socialists like Bernie Sanders are encouraging the United States, you have to stop the AI production, you have to stop it so that China can build all of the AI. China promises, they pinky promise that they're going to stop the AI and that the United States must stop it just so because China is good. And we're taking that approach. That is ridiculous. That is insane. All Chinese nationals right here at this present time, here and now, unless explicitly cut off from Beijing, should have their visas canceled because this is a serious national security threat for the United States. Meanwhile, again, the Democratic Socialists of America have made the decision to send their people over to China to take an actual pledge of allegiance for the. And I know this sounds like clickbait insanity. I know that this sounds like something that is truly off the rocker. It is not. The DSA made a decision going over to support and defend China. This is the New York Post here. Members of the DSA pledged to, quote, support and defend China. The, quote, survival of Chinese socialism is a crucial matter. About a dozen of them made an apparent, the, quote, Friends of Socialist China, a London-based group with members in the United States, touts 952 signatories on its pledge to, quote, support the People's Republic of China and to promote the understanding of Chinese socialism, end quote. 11 self-described Democrat Socialists of America and DSA International Committee members are among those that pledged to, quote, resolve to support, defend, and build understanding of Chinese socialism. And if you question it, according to the own organization, they say, quote, the capitalist system of the United States is totally incapable of solving the problems of poverty and inequality and is, quote, inextricably linked with war, empire, racism, misogyny, alienation, and environmental destruction, end quote, which is hilarious because, again, it is China who is currently in a race with India for dumping the most crap into rivers and building the most filthy, garbage-infested factory infrastructure and power plants known to man. The rest of us be damned. And yet, again, apparently ignoring the Communist Act in the United States of 1954, just completely forgetting the history of Chinese communism and socialism within this country, the United States, for some insane reason outside of the Department of Justice, allows it to operate. Now, there is another side of this because I see a super chat coming in from Jay Lynn. Very kind of you, by the way. You don't need to give us super chats. Says, is there a way to take back our land in China, especially by our military bases? And not bad with the Chinese accent. Oh, that was a Bernie accent. Man, if that sounded like a Chinese accent, my voice must be worse tonight than I thought. Speaking of, Radio Crew will send you over to the commercial break and give you a break from me for a second. We're going to continue this over on the show. The answer, by the way, to that question is yes. If the State Department and the President of the United States decided to declare a national emergency, he has the authority to do so. What's my evidence for this? One of my least favorite presidents of all time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the man who gave Europe to Russia, that man just decided that there was a national emergency, and he, alongside an approval committee from Congress, decided that it was totally okay to imprison individuals with the belief that they might pose a threat on behalf of the Empire of Japan. Yes, the president of the United States absolutely has, and by the way, has the authority not just to expel Chinese nationals. There is no federal judge. There is no appellate court judge and panel. There is no Supreme Court justice that can tell the Secretary of State under the presidency of the United States what to do on this matter. They have literally no say. In the meantime, though, the socialists have their own scandals. So moving over to Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed, the Democrat socialist candidate who is running to be the senator of Michigan, has a brand new scandal under his belt. So as we get closer and closer and closer to the just nutcase situations all over the country, now we are seeing a lot of scandals that are popping up. And these, oh my goodness. Essentially, the Democrats are now just in their dog days of August. Very, very good pun by producer Daniel there. So Abdul El-Sayed, during his previous time as, well, according to the Daily Mail, I'm going to read the Daily Mail article on here. Quote, progressive Michigan Senate hopeful Abdul El-Sayed has wooed voters with his credentials as a doctor with the mission of healthcare for all. However, when he oversaw Detroit's animal control system, the 4,680, over 70% of the dogs and cats at the Detroit Animal Care and Control Center during his oversight, when he was over it, 4,680 dogs and cats were euthanized. That's insane. Now, of the entire county, though, about 26.4% of all dogs that have been euthanized in the county in like the last 10 years were euthanized during Abdul El-Sayed's tenure, which is insane. Now, the DACC, Detroit, failed to publicly report its 2016 euthanasia figures. However, an exclusive report obtained by the Daily Mail reveals that just in 2016 alone, over 1,056 dogs and 29 cats that year were euthanized. So essentially, what does this mean? That in Detroit, they had, any animal shelter has a lot of dogs and a lot of cats. Like thousands of dogs were killed under Abdul El-Sayed's oversight, and like no cats were killed. The reason that this is funny is in Islam, dogs are haram. Dogs are considered very dirty. And there are so many videos across the overwide interwebs. If you are a lady who happens to live in a very Islamic dominant area, if you walk with a dog, Muslims will avoid you. I mean, they will like forms a magical bubble. They will avoid you. It is the single argument for pit bulls that I've ever heard in my entire life, for the record. But either way, there are so many arguments. His campaign was reached out to and asked if Abdul El-Sayed, as a Muslim man, is against dogs, and his campaign returned no comment. Bro, look, I am not like the world's most super duper, like I'm obsessed with dogs and cats kind of a thing. I will say it is wildly interesting that in 2017, so 2016, 2017, while Abdul's running it, the DACC, the Detroit Animal Control Center, euthanized further 1,404 dogs and 13 cats. Only a 20% save to live release date. That's insane. Radio crew, welcome back from the commercial break. To summarize the scandal here, this is insane. So again, the Islamic candidate, Abdul El-Sayed. And before all of you come out, they just don't like him because he's brown. I know a lot of brown people. I don't know how to tell you this, but there are a lot of people who would be considered brown. But someone from Mexico City is not the same as someone from New Delhi, and is not the same as someone who hails from Oman. Just so that you know, people's cultures and beliefs have a lot more to bear. But again, Abdul El-Sayed, a Muslim man and a socialist who is running to be the senator in Michigan against the most milquetoast candidate on planet Earth, Mike Rogers. Again, I'm sorry, my voice is tired, but this is so funny. Abdul El-Sayed, during his tenure running, and he's Mr. Health, he's Mr. Doctor. This guy made the decision to euthanize thousands of dogs and like no cats. Again, dogs are haram in Islam. They're forbidden. They're considered dirty. There was only a 20% survival rate for dogs in that animal control center 80% of all animals not released alive. That's bonkers. That's bonkers. And by the way, when they reached out, when the Daily Mail, again, Daily Mail is not like a right-wing outlet. When they reached out to the Detroit area, animal control center for comment, they just said that the euthanasia data is not released publicly. They didn't dispute the data at all. So stellar stuff from the Abdul El-Sayed campaign. He's pushing through, though, with the weirdest political ads and also picking a fight with Mike Rogers. So other audio that we have previously played from Abdul El-Sayed shows him complaining about football, as like American football, as a toxically masculine thing, which is, let's just call it a decision. It's a bad decision, not necessarily the best of decisions to go kind of as your, all of the receipts out there, we have them. We did a Francesca Hong receipt collection. That was very popularly received. We might have to make one for Abdul El-Sayed. So he had this big, huge video where he talked about how football, again, is an audio recording, where he talked about football being a very toxically masculine thing that wasn't very good. And Mike Rogers, the Republican Senate candidate, made fun of it. So then Abdul El-Sayed challenged him to a fight. I'm not sure. Guys, just as a pro tip, when you're doing a political campaign, it's probably not a very good idea to challenge your opponent to tackle football with no pads, which is an interesting move. It's just an interesting move. Now, I will get that clip for you here in a second. My producer crew is going to pull that one up. In the meantime, though, and I would be remiss if I didn't remind you, socialists do have a really rough history with dogs before we get too far from this. I will remind you that Hassan Piker, again, the Turkish dude who is like the left's little favorite, little Joe Rogan, he has a clip of him electrocuting his dog for standing up on stream. Here's a little reminder.
I hate this country.
Of course, he's just, all of the language is rough. So there's his dog in the background here. Man.
So much. Then Los Angeles.
So he's talking, his dog in the background.
So America's much
starts
more
to stand up, just like stand up and move around. Okay? And as soon as it looks like his dog is going to step down from the
America, Kaya, please just stop.
He then yells at his dog, and then the dog yips. You can see his arm move for something. And it looks like he shocks his dog. Now, the internet, again, came after him and is like, yeah, he just shocked his dog there, found the collar, the exact collar from Amazon. So, man, the socialists have a really rough history with dogs. It's a real struggle. A real struggle. So, anywho, my producer crew does very, very, very kindly found that clip for me for Abdul El-Sayed now going after going after Mike Rogers for the football comments.
The allies are launching is already more bitter. All you got to do is look at the ads you're already watching on TV, started today. You know, they think that you want to use my whole name against me. Mike, listen, man, if you can't say the name, it's Abdurrahman, keep the name out your damn mouth. I'll be happy to give you lessons. But they understand that the only way that they think they can win is to drag us into the mud.
So then he just hops right in the mud. And he so pronounce my name this way, and also I challenge you to, two-hand touch football, whatever nonsense. Just really, really, really bizarre. It's just really bizarre for no reason. There's no reason to act like this. Now, he's also getting roasted because not only is there the football clip, also, Abdul El-Sayed is being roasted, and again, justifiably so, for this Blues Clues. Like, he did this very strange ad, like he's Steve from the children's show Blues Clues.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
So manly, so much manliness going on there.
Thanks, mailbox.
It's cringy. So he's getting roasted and toasted. And again, justifiably so, I'd argue. There's just no reason to do the goof troop style thing that's going on here. But again, all of this stuff set and aside, the Republicans are making fun of him, and they're giving him a really hard time because they say, well, Mike Rogers is just a normal dude. Like, that's pretty much all that's kind of, going on here. I'll move on to kind of the other hilarious stuff here. Mike Rogers obviously leading in the polls. It's like 51-47. Not really close at all. On the Wisconsin side, Tom Tiffany, the Republican candidate for governor, is now trying to make the allegation that David Crowley, who beat Francesca Hong, the socialist, is pretty much just a worse socialist. Like the same thing, different branding.
Came in the final 2 weeks and they said, we have got to change this. When Francesca Hong imploded, which started when she said that the police officer committed an execution, that was the beginning of the end for her. And they were like, we've got to get somebody else here in Wisconsin. And they were able to execute that with David Crowley.
I'm sorry, there's a comment that just came from Gigi Evans, Steve from Blue Clues, more like Pee Wee Haram.
Congressman Tiffany, can you tell me, because what I'm reading, their policies aren't all that different, are they? I mean, is David Crowley maybe a polished up version of Francesca Hong, or am I reading that incorrectly?
Yeah, it's a great point. Just 2 weeks ago, when they were having their debates, David Crowley never challenged Francesca Hong for the beliefs that she has. If you're trying to win a race, wouldn't you try to paint some contrast between you and your opponent? And
this is true, by the way.
He went on to say, my policies will be very similar, not much different than Francesca Hong.
That is a direct quote, by the way. If you're going to run the socialist branding, eventually it'll stick to you. Same thing, by the way, over with Troy Jackson. So Troy Jackson and Maine is, again, it started as a dumpster fire. It's getting worse as a dumpster fire. Graham Platner, again, all of the scandals that broke, the Nazi tattoo, the rape abuse scandals, the domestic abuse scandals, the kidnapping scandals, the chatting with minors on Kick scandals, and on and so forth. He's back now. Yeah, Graham Platner. Again, the Democrat Party right now is in such a state of disarray in the funding. They're in such severe debt that instead of getting like Taylor Swift out to promote your campaign and encourage people to come vote, you're just getting the guy that you just booted for the worst scandals that we've seen in a good while politically. So Platner's now back. So he's going to be headlining Maine Labor Day rallies for Troy Jackson. Incredible. And the rest of the Democrats watching this and going, man, we're still using him. They're trying to laugh it off. Here's Ro Khanna of California. Again, all of the Democrats are just trying to laugh off the scandals and the abuse and like the really disturbing stuff and just say, well, I mean, he just wanted Medicaid for all or Medicare for all. That's really all he wanted.
You also endorsed Graham Platner, another left candidate who flamed out in the end, to say the least, amid scandals. What did you learn from that experience?
I should have listened to my wife. She's almost never made me do an interview. She said, you make it clear on the record that I was opposed to you endorsing him. But on a deeper level, there were signs of toxicity that other groups had picked up.
Other groups had picked up.
And I needed to be more sensitive to it. I said, I
need to be more sensitive to it. More sensitive to it. But when you get the candidate that doesn't have, so the Democrats are basically in a state where they have two kinds of candidates. Either number one, they have the scandal-ridden person who is awful, but who can kind of talk normal to voters. The other person that they have is they don't have a ton of scandals, maybe. Well, I mean, the Abdul El-Sayed and the dog thing is a horrible scandal. No shaking it there. But then they say perhaps just the weirdest, lamest, and dare I say, the gayest things that I've ever seen. I didn't even realize I had a different Abdul El-Sayed football clip in mind. This is a new one.
Exactly, because this is from his podcast. There was a February 2023 episode of America Dissected podcast where El-Sayed questioned whether there was any version of football that he said could be, quote, ethical or safe.
So not only does he say that football is toxically masculine, but he says that apparently it's rooted in white supremacy and slavery. Radio crew, we got to send you to the commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream. My voice may be down, but I mean, all of these clips that are just exploding onto the internet are at least entertaining. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. There you go.
And he linked the culture of the sport, which he did play growing up, to something much broader. He said narratives that had been historically used to justify slavery, westward expansion, and other forms of oppression. Listen to Amir.
You think about all the wars that we fight abroad, all of the sordid history of oppressing other people in the name of this American idea, right? Whether it was, quote, manifest destiny and destroying Native Americans, or it was the transatlantic slave trade, where, you know, folks who, quote, founded this country on the backs of Native folks that they destroyed, then captured people, enslaved them, and had them work their fields because they thought it was their right, right? And all of this, like a lot of these narratives, you kind of see echoed in the ethos of football.
Exactly.
A lot of these things you see echoed in the ethos of football. What? You don't, guys. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to make that decision. You don't have to say insane, silly, stupid nonsense. Now, again, I told you that Maine's having a rough time because they had the Graham Platner situation. The replacement for Graham Platner, the socialist Troy Jackson. I told you the scandals were going to be coming, and yep. Now, Susan Collins and Troy Jackson, they are neck and neck. They are neck and neck. So again, Troy Jackson is currently at 51-49 in the prediction rating by Decision Desk, our friends over there. They are very, very close. And the scandals are now starting to roll out. And he's kind of trying to act normal. He's like, oh, I'm a fifth generation logger and that's it. So this is how he's trying to paint himself.
I'm a fifth generation logger from Allagash. I grew up a poor kid in a town full of poor people.
The only virtue for the left is just that you were poor at one time. That's the only virtue, because they assume that all people who are poor are good, unless they're like white and from Appalachia. And then all rich people, or people who have money, except for them, are bad. They have money and they're good, but you have money and you're bad.
Doing everything right and still struggling to get ahead. And it's worse now. People in this country work so damn hard and still feel so damn...
See, he said damn, so he's like really edgy. He's so normal.
That's no way to live. Susan Collins keeps telling us that everything's fine, but we know it's not. We all have eyes, paychecks, and bills. We know we're getting screwed. You deserve better. I'm Troy Jackson.
Okay, so what is his plan for this? Seriously, I looked at for his policy platforms. What does he plan to do? He says Medicare for all. And yeah, that's it. That's all he's got. That's his big plan. Raise taxes to give you a crappy version of Canadian healthcare where they tell you to commit suicide. Stellar. Absolutely special there, sweetie. But I told you the scandals are coming out. So it appears that there are prior statements in which his second cousin, whom he also has 2 children with, you know, two kids with his second cousin. Well, it appears that also not only maybe some domestic abuse allegations, some like assault and battery, and apparently it's his second cousin girlfriend lady who made a former statement to police because he assaulted another man and gave her a good shove. Now, the Troy Jackson campaign has now spoken on behalf of the second cousin he has kids with and said, no, she has no memory of saying any of those things, so I don't recall. Not, she never said that, it's, oh, I don't recall. Excellent. Just absolutely excellent. What a wonderful time to be in politics. And the interviews are coming out with people that have known him forever, because if you're going to say I'm a fifth generation logger, if there are people out there who know you're a liar, like Graham Platner with his oyster farm that only ever sold oyster to mommy, and he didn't even have like any like big business filings for this website or the website for the oyster farm or some actual filings for it until after he had a website scheduled and up, the domain registered for his Senate campaign run. So like that kind of a thing.
So, Kim, thank you for agreeing to meet with us.
The Maine Wire is now interviewing individuals who are like, yeah, I've known this guy forever. And no, he hasn't been like a fifth generation logger forever. Oh, I'm just like you. People aren't buying it. My favorite, though, is a clip from 2002 that we now have as to where he says that all those values he says he has, he's like, I don't care. I ran as a Republican just because I thought I'd get elected. Hell, I'd have run as a communist.
Democrat, well, it's no secret. When I ran for legislature in 2002, I was a Republican. And I had no idea. All I cared about was getting into the legislature because that seemed to be the place that I could actually fix some of the problems that were.
So he says in this new clip that's unearthed that back in 2002, yeah, he ran as a Republican because he has to apologize for the left for like being a Republican in 2002, he says. He's like, I wasn't a Republican. I just ran so that I could get in power. Nice Freudian slip there.
Happening in my area. And I would have ran as anything. I would have ran as a communist. I would have ran.
I would have run as anything. I'd have run as a communist if I thought I could get in power. Yikes. I don't think I would have said that. So again, while all of this is going on, you have to look at kind of the midterm at large. And what are people doing? So again, Republican Congress is doing a whole lot of nothing because right now we're really more of an administrative state. We are. Again, I hate to say it. The administrative state has grown. And so if the administrative state is going to be doing things, at least they can be doing some things that are worthwhile. And the Department of Justice under Todd Blanche, the new Attorney General, is getting to work. I have said this before. I have made it explicitly clear that the Department of Justice under Todd Blanche is good for one reason and one reason alone. Pam Bondi got up in front of the country, in front of the podium, and she would say, this administration's doing so many really good and wonderful things. And then she would say, I know this is going on and we're going to stop it. And then they wouldn't do that. It was all talk, no walk. Blanche gets in and they're like, hey, are you going to do something about this? And he says, I don't know, wait and see. And then we're getting like arrests. We talked about this on the show yesterday. 1,000 individuals at least in this massive immigration and marriage fraud scandal by these 11 to 13 individuals in New York. Now, there are more arrests that are being made. There's more investigations now being made into this, again, Chinese-connected immigration fraud scandal. Anywho, now the Department of Justice is also arresting and charging the Southern Poverty Law Center's former chief financial officer. And we talked about the SPLC before. This is a very, very bad thing for the left's nonprofit infrastructure, which is hilarious. Essentially, you have two kinds of left-wing nonprofits. You either have the left-wing fake Catholic NGO, non-governmental organization, fake Lutheran, like nonprofit groups that aid in open invasion, military-aged men, human trafficking, illegal immigration stuff that also may be taking money from the Chinese Communist Party. And then the other half of the NGO network is trying to directly undermine American culture by stoking racial tension and trying to split the country apart. That's where the Chinese-connected groups, the Russian-connected groups, and the KKK-connected groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center step in.
Unsealed a case against the former chief financial officer of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Can you please speak a little bit about what you've learned as part of that investigation and if we should expect more charges?
So yes, today, my understanding is today there was an arrest made and there is a new indictment that includes the former CFO of SPLC. I don't have any comments about whether, we've said from the beginning, everybody, not just me, but anybody who's talked about this case, like virtually every criminal case, the fact that an indictment is returned doesn't end the investigation. It's just part of the investigation in most cases, which is certainly true in this case.
So the reason that he's making this clarification here is there were a few over on the left that said this is all they found, just one corrupt CFO. Blanche is saying, no. This is the first. This is like one of the first major arrests here because, again, the stuff that she did, Heidi Barrick, the former SPLC CFO and intelligence director, because you can't make this stuff up, was arrested for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, false statements to a bank, and money laundering concealment. So again, the SPLC funneled over $4 million in tax-exempt donations from 2007 to 2023 to informants inside white supremacist and neo-Nazi groups like the KKK via fictitious entities, which, for example, Barrick is accused of overseeing. And also, it just so happens, she was also sleeping with one of the KKK. So essentially, like the whole Charleston rally, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which labeled Moms for Liberty, Turning Point USA, and Charlie Kirk, and very good friends of mine, again, like the Family Research Council, as white supremacist organizations, that SPLC was making sure that parts of the KKK were paid and laid. And the DOJ is actually now taking it to task.
I think as alleged in the indictment, this individual participated in the scheme as alleged. I believe she was part of the effort to open bank accounts in completely fictitious companies' names and make payments to individuals for reasons that were not that were not accurate as described. But I don't have. I think the indictment was unsealed this morning. I believe it was unsealed this morning. I think the arrest was this morning. I don't have anything to say beyond that, except
good
to say that this is exactly what we said would happen in a case like this, which is.
By the way, that's the correct response. Hey, the indictment was I try to do the same thing with you guys. You guys ask me questions in the comment section during the show. And then if I haven't read the actual report, I'm not going to tell you things that I don't know. Todd Blanche is the Attorney General of the United States, not simply saying, oh, I know everything and I'm out here to make a big show. Good. Do not overpromise. Over-deliver. Under-promise. Say, this is my standard, this is what we're going to do. By the way, this is what Todd Blanche is asserting to the DOJ in his very first address to the DOJ staff. Unfortunately, I have to send the radio crew out first. Radio crew, it's been a real pleasure. TV crew, it's been fun. We're going to continue on the live stream because there's just a lot more news to cover. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Radio crew, take care. Sorry, I have to send them out, FCC rules and the final sign-off channel marker, that kind of a thing. So here's Blanche in his very first address to the Department of Justice, where he says, I'm a dude. I'm here to do a job. That's what you expect of me. This is what I expect of you.
Everybody in this department, whether it's here in D.C. or around the country, work hard. Your hours are long. Stakes are high. There's probably days when the work and the bureaucracy feels heavier than the mission that you're actually trying to execute on. But on those days, what I do is remember why you signed up for this job. Remember the work you're doing and why it matters. Remember the victims that you're helping, that you're representing, that you're trying to make whole, the communities you're making safer, the rule of law that you're defending, and hopefully that helps you get through the day. I know that I will not get every decision right. Everything that I do will not be the right path or the right decision.
By the way, that kind of humility, I love it. I do. That's not false modesty, by the way, either. He's not trying to lean in and smugly say, well, I'm not perfect, but I put my pants on just like you, one intern at a time. He's not doing that kind of crap like Garland would do. The kind of fake modesty. He just says, I'm not perfect. Again, the reason I like this, and if you just allow me for a second, this is my standard for the show. I do, in fact, from time to time, make mistakes. I do sometimes not know things. It's okay. I know there are a lot of show hosts out there who try to pretend that they know everything, and every night is the biggest, breakingest thing that ever happened on planet Earth. We don't do that. Because the minute that I start doing that, find another show. The minute I tell you that I'm perfect, find another host. The minute that Blanche tells you he's infallible and he's going to cure the entire world and is going to fix it all, find another attorney general.
No one does that, but I do promise you this. I promise you that I will work as hard as any of you. I promise you that I will listen to you, that I will listen to the ideas that you have or the adjustments that we need to make, and if we need to make them, I will make them. I want people who want to do the right thing every day, because that's what I do every day, or at least that's what I try to do every day. If you do that, I promise I will back you every step of the way. I can't tell you how proud I am to stand with you guys.
So again, very nice stuff. Now, there is something the Department of Justice has done that makes me more, again, I am far more happy on this than perhaps anything else. This would be specifically the Department of Justice decision so far not to appeal a judicial decision. You're like, Tony, a judicial decision, why would I care about the DOJ choosing not to appeal a judicial decision? So key recent developments, the National Firearms Act, as a quick reminder, the National Firearms Act made all of these like random tax measures that were to infringe on Americans' Second Amendment rights. So if you wanted to go buy a suppressor, often called silencers, if you wanted to go buy a suppressor, you had to fill all of these various forms out. You had to wait this huge chunk of time and then pay all of these extra tax stamps because the government wanted to keep it as difficult as possible for you to buy a suppressor. Now, this is ridiculous because a lot of people think that Hollywood, which to call them silencers, and they make weapons so quiet that James Bond in a Russian facility can shoot a guy and the guy next to him in the next stall won't hear him. James Bond GoldenEye, phenomenal Nintendo 64 game. But anywho, the judicial decision by U.S. District Judge James Wesley Hendricks in the Northern District of Texas, God bless Texas, and a Trump appointee, by the way, on August 5th, ruled that in the consolidated cases, the Silencer Shop Foundation versus the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and in Jensen versus the ATF, that key NFA registration, approval, and related requirements are unconstitutional for certain untaxed firearms. The items affected: suppressors, quote-unquote silencers, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and in part, any other weapons, AOWs. Now, machine guns and destructive devices remain taxed and regulated under the NFA, which makes me rather sad because someday I would love to take my the Sten Mark IIs that I have built, which you are allowed to build a fully automatic weapon. There's just a bunch of special rules for it. But I would love to take the couple of Stens that I've built. In fact, what taught me to weld, in fact, and I'm not a good welder, to be clear. I would love to take those out and just fire a full magazine of 9mm. And I did, by the way, go to Highsmith Guns here in Greenfield, Indiana. And absolutely today, as the DOJ's decision today, I finally placed an order for something I have desperately wanted for ages. Those of you who have been around the show for a while know that there are two things that I want more than anything. Number one, it is a Toyota Hilux, which Obama's stupid, retarded chicken tax keeps me from owning. I hate that. It's the most useful truck on planet Earth. It is the pickup of choice for every terrorist organization around the planet. I want one. They can drive through a lake. They're awesome. The other thing that I want more than anything is a Heckler & Koch MP5, the anti-terrorist weapon. 9mm, not 22 long rifle. I want an MP5. The weapon, famous for the SAS screwing with the Iranians. That's what I want. And I want it a specific model that has the silencer, the suppressor built in. That's what I want more than anything. I finally called and had one ordered today, again, at Highsmith Guns, because they take excellent care of me. Now, here's why this matters today in the DOJ. What on earth am I talking about? So the judge issued a permanent injunction blocking the ATF or the DOJ from enforcing any of the challenged provisions and specific sections of 26 U.S. Code and related regulations, and said it's unconstitutional. You can't do this. Now, it includes a 7-day stay, which expired around yesterday, August the 12th, and allowed the Department of Justice time to seek an appeal. So the DOJ, which governs the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, would have to appeal to an appellate court and then take it up to the Supreme Court and say, please, oh, please appeal this. We don't want people to buy suppressors without all of the hoops to jump through. And then the DOJ didn't. In fact, Republican lawmakers like Senator Steve Daines, Representative Andrew Clyde, the Gun Owners of America, which is far preferable to the NRA, in my opinion, although the NRA board has gotten a lot better in the last couple of years, they urged Attorney General Todd Blanche not to appeal and instead to just apply the ruling nationwide, which they haven't done just yet, but they're likely to. Now, unfortunately, there appears to be an unsigned statement from the Department of Justice saying they're not staying the case. It's just different than not appealing, and we're not going to stay the case. According to Sean Davis over at the Federalist, a friend of mine, he says that multiple Trump administration sources are saying that Brett Shumate, I may be pronouncing the last name wrong. I'm terrible at name pronunciations. Give me a break here. Who runs the DOJ Civil Division, is the DOJ official behind efforts to appeal the suppressor and NFA decision and forced continued registration of suppressors. So the statement suggests that there's still an administration official or two who is attempting to thwart this Second Amendment win, and that would be a major, major mistake. You have these, again, the Republican big tent. There are quite a few individuals who still think that it's really unsafe. What if someone has a suppressor? Oh my God! Like, don't go to Hollywood for this bullcrap. Firearms should be sold, in my opinion, to American citizens. That should be a requirement that you're a citizen. And then citizens should be able to purchase them upon proper documentation that you're a citizen from vending machines. Again, as the famous cult quote goes, I've heard it said that God made all men, but Samuel Colt made all men equal. I love it. And then let's see what Sam Colt can do for women, meaning that like the best defense for a lady is not walking a dog down the street. It's packing. So just in case you had any questions as to whether or not yours truly was aggressively pro Second Amendment. That's also what the VP9 is right next to my desk here. So that brings us over to two final big pieces of news for the evening. Before I do, a quick word from today's sponsor before my voice gives out completely, Augusta Precious Metals. If you are interested in learning more about wealth protection and the role that physical gold and silver can play in a long-term retirement strategy, Augusta is a great educational resource. That's right. Not only am I really, really pro unfettered Second Amendment, I am also very, very pro, especially silver and ammunition. I have encouraged people, I have silver and ammunition. That's what I have. I think it's very useful, not only because silver is really, really great as a hedge that's probably more divisible than gold is, but now gold and silver in this huge technical leap forward, this third industrial revolution, if you want to call it that, that is being used in a ton of semiconductor and processing. So the price of gold and silver is continuing to skyrocket. Silver is useful, boys and girls. That's why I have it. Also, a lot of ammunition. Because, yeah. Anywho, so the experienced Augusta education team offers personalized one-on-one educational web conferences where they explain how physical gold and silver work, how a gold IRA works, they answer your questions, they help you better understand your options, and they don't shove down your throat the bizarre notion that you need to buy today and they'll send you 30 gold-plated copper coins and that kind of crap. Visit TonyTrustsGold.com. Hey, Augusta, can we get TonyTrustSilver.com too, just for fun? TonyTrustGold.com or text Tony to 35052. Excellent educational resources. I love them. They're a good sponsor. I'm really picky about my sponsors. I turned down a sponsor this week because I'm not going to be like, hey, use this weight loss vitamin super supplement. No, but just an educational resource on the kind of stuff that I use. Heck yeah. Thanks, Augusta, for sponsoring the show and not being really annoying. So that stuff said, just a last little bit of news here. Again, my voice is now starting to give way. And so I want to talk a little bit about the fraudulent hospitals and transgender billing. And then, of course, Nick Shirley's latest investigation into New York City daycare and fraud, because fraud is one of the biggest issues that a lot of Americans have faced in mismanagement of their funds. We have all of these conversations and arguments about how the federal government should be spending their money. And even in all of the spending that we're doing, there are still people who are cheating the system, that are taking money that should at least be going to Americans properly, following the law, and it's going to anyone else. So Vice President J.D. Vance has been retasked, I think, effectively and appropriately away from the Middle East, and is now focusing very, very heavily on the anti-fraud measures, criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, with Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. behind doctors and hospitals illegally billing taxpayers and insurance companies for gender mutilation for minors. Here's that video from today.
Hey everybody, this is Vice President J.D. Vance. I'm here with my friends and colleagues, of course, our great Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Admiral Brian Christine, the Assistant Secretary for Health. Parents bring...
How nice to have an Assistant Secretary and an Admiral that's not in a skirt. If you think that wasn't done intentionally, you're nuts.
Their children to doctors because they trust them. They trust doctors to tell them the truth, and they trust hospitals to put their children ahead of ideology and profit. But when that trust gets violated, parents deserve to have a government that will stand up for them and for their kids and do something about it. Today, the Trump administration is proud to announce we're doing exactly that.
Today, HHS released Wolves in White Coats, a report examining pediatric gender medicine and insurance billing across America. The findings raise serious questions about what families were told what insurers were told and how these procedures were built.
So there's a full clip is over on Health and Human Services website, also with the vice president. Essentially, though, these criminal referrals, which are, again, very, very important. It's part of keeping so many individuals who participated in fraud from 2015 to 2025. For example, doctors and hospitals who tried to essentially provide gender transition experimentation for minors. They would bill insurance agencies by saying, quote, they have an endocrine disorder, unspecified. Just endocrine disorder for over $50 million and precocious puberty for $11 million. That's insane. The full Health and Human Services report is titled Wolves in White Coats, 225 hospitals and clinics with these suspicious billing patterns. Now, here's the issue. By the way, this is what doctors would argue. They would say, well, the child that is a boy that wants to be a girl, he has an endocrine disorder. No, because they would give that child estrogen. A boy who is going through puberty and is expressing, like, I don't know, says that he's a girl, expressing far too many feminine traits, I suppose. The answer would be giving the child, if you have to mess around with the endocrine system, which is wildly risky because in medicine, we do not understand the endocrine system fully at all. And anytime you tweak the endocrine system, your hormones, you are running a very, very serious risk of cancer. All kinds of different things go into both your immune system and your endocrine system. So with the decision by hospitals to say, hey, well, this teenage boy, maybe he's running a little low on testosterone, which that's not even proven in a lot of these cases. He needs more estrogen. No. The answer, if there was a child that is suffering from a testosterone shortage, and I have family members who have suffered from testosterone shortages, the answer is in a best case scenario, more testosterone, not more estrogen. Good God. And the same for a lady. You don't just give a girl testosterone. And by the way, same thing for precocious puberty. You don't do that either. So this is medical malpractice to a very severe degree. So I look forward to these criminal referrals. Again, I didn't see Todd Blanche there either. And I'm not saying, by the way, that it's wrong for Vance or for RFK Jr. or for the Admiral there to get out and say they're announcing these criminal referrals. Now they've done the investigations, they're doing the criminal referrals. It is up to the Department of Justice to then look at these and assess these criminal referrals and then make the arrests. I don't want to hear investigation announcements. I don't want to hear, oh, we're taking a look at this. I want Blanche to give the exact same answer that he gave to everything else. We're looking at it. When we're ready to make arrests, you know how you're going to find out? Because they're going to be in the back of the cop car headed to jail. That's what I want. I don't want anything else. Because there are people who can do the rest of this stuff in the meantime. For example, independent journalist Nick Shirley. He has been investigating fraud in the adult daycare centers. We talked about this a lot yesterday when I had more of a voice, that is, in New York City. So at one daycare center, that's what this video I'm about to show you is from, the Living Well Daycare Center, owned again by, there seems to be patterns of different ethnic groups that participate in different kinds of fraud. So Middle Eastern and Indian ethnic groups appear to come to the country, and North African ethnic groups appear to come to the country and operate transport and trucking companies that are fraudulent. And then also a lot of childcare operational centers that are fraudulent. And then for the kind of Southeast Asian community ethnic groups appear to come to the country and operate a lot of fake daycare center operation groups for adults. That's the patterns. Don't come after me. That's just who the groups who are coming here. That seems to be the advice that's being given in Korean or Somali or Hindi, etc. ad nauseum. So Nick Shirley showed up outside of the Living Well Adult Daycare Center, which received, according to Shirley, $8.6 million from Medicaid that you paid for in 2025 alone. When he showed up, the place that should have been filled with all of these adults that they're providing care for, you guessed it, empty. Absolutely empty. Here's Nick Shirley confronting the owners of this facility.
$41,580. That is 5.6 times the national average. Let's go see what kind of business they're operating. And Living Well received $8.6 million in 2025. And on their peak day of business, they billed the state for 406 beneficiaries.
Remember how you and I were told? Remember how you and I were told that immigrants, that illegal immigrants and legal immigrants were not receiving federal benefits? The heck is this? The heck is this? By the way, when there's a common question that I've been asked quite a bit, maybe I'll save that for the end, about the difference between technocrats and corporatist kind of stuff when I talk about the left and the right. All of the corporatist Democrats told you, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, all of these Democrats, from Cory Booker to Mazie Hirono, made it clear to you no illegals, no immigrants were receiving tons of federal benefits. Yet this immigrant-owned facility in New York City allegedly fraudulently billed Medicaid in 2025 alone for over $8.5 million for adults that aren't even there.
My name's Nick Shirley.
No, it's only on your survey.
And sir, could you just answer the question?
Oh, you're Nick Shirley? I'm sorry. No, bye, see ya.
No.
My, how interesting that as soon as they heard the name Nick Shirley, all of a sudden, no questions at all.
So, we just come straight with the facts. And
Now, by the way, the last time that Nick Shirley did this, the lady that owned the daycare center in Minneapolis tried to flee to London and then was later extradited to the United States for stealing about $5 million for her Somali daycare center. Interesting. Man, these patterns sure are bizarre. Wow, crazy, curious. Now, I do want to talk a lot more. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel today announced charges against 6 people this week in connection with alleged voter fraud tied to the state's November 2024 general election. 5 of those charged are non-citizens accused of voting despite being ineligible. The 6th of the U.S. citizen accused of registering their non-citizen spouse to vote. Cam Higbee, friend of the show, also went to Minneapolis. And according to his reporting, he hasn't released the full report yet, dressed up in a full burqa, whatever the burqa that's like the full coverage is called, dressed up in that, and then was encouraged to go and vote illegally without any kind of ID, just totally different person, which all the stuff that you were told wasn't happening. We'll have to cover that tomorrow. And then also, I mentioned Secretary of War Pete Hegseth talking about the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East. And then also these reports about the USS Abraham Lincoln, that aircraft carrier in the Middle East, and reports of troops jumping off the boat and like poor conditions on the boat. What's going on? A lot of media reporting suggesting it's despair over the blockade. We're going to cover that tomorrow because I simply, at 8:18 p.m. here on Thursday, August the 13th, I just don't. Not the hijab, the burqa. Maybe I was right. That kind of a thing. Thank you very much to the comments for correcting me there. The last thing I'll say here before signing off, I mentioned the corporatists and the technocrats. The right-wing establishment and the left-wing establishment are called the uniparty often. And I've never made that allegation, and there's a reason why. The right-wing establishment are technocrats. All of the old heads on the right who have been there forever and all seem to kind of align, they're technocrats. Technocrats believe that those who are the experts and the oldest should be in power, the most experienced. That's why they always side with, they've been in politics for 30, 40 years. That's why they should win primaries, that kind of thing. The right-wing technocrats. The left-wing establishment are corporatists. Corporatists, or cronyists, depending on how you want to put it, are those who believe that the federal government should heavily subsidize things like corporations that they like and that, sign on with their kind of a thing. This was the initial buy for big tech, by the way, because you would have people like Nancy Pelosi that would encourage Barack Obama to give out all of these special subsidies and grants and exceptions for big tech if they would move over to the left. And they would, for example, pick up all of these bizarre hiring practices to expand their HR departments for all of this equity stuff. And the reason I point that out, the reason that a lot of this bloat exists right now on the spending level is because the corporatist establishment, those who wanted a bunch of cronyism, that's kind of the halfway socialism kind of thing. The same with healthcare, by the way. The Obamacare was not a socialist move as much as it was a state subsidization move. And it screwed up the healthcare system royally, even more so. So when I talk about like that kind of establishmentarianism, that's what I mean. And they're very, very different. Because there is some merit to a technocratic aim, having experts be around is good. You know, I want a person in the medical industry to actually know a little something about medicine. I want someone in the education industry to know what the heck education is and how it works. Now, does that mean that they're automatically always right? No. No. And again, this is where I would point to the book, not the movie, Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, and kind of the fascist tyranny of the technocrats, of the experts. Another topic for another time. But when I'm talking about those who have brought us to the point of just throwing money at things and thinking that'll fix things, that's the corporate subsidization metric. And it's why a lot of Democrats made it very, very easy for foreign powers to invest in the United States, like China, for example, because it allowed this reciprocal power brokerage between the corporate entities who are willing to move leftist aims, like George Soros, for instance, here in the country while getting corporate kickbacks. And then what would happen after those politicians retired? Well, then they would go serve on the boards of those various companies. So anyway, maybe that wasn't the best explanation, but that is something that I've been meaning to explain for a while because a lot of you have asked those questions. I'm going to go ahead and sign things off here. So again, if you're in a thunderstorming, flash flooding area of the country, we're praying for you. Please keep those out there in those situations in your prayers. Be safe, stay dry. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with a little more voice. Tomorrow, Friday, it is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.